Welcome to Type C Tech Reviews. Today we're going to be doing a review of the KOORUI 27E1QA. If at any point during the video you want to check out this exact same monitor, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but let's jump into it. Right off the bat, this is a 27-inch screen size with a resolution of 2560 by 1440p, and this is a VA panel. Now this brings the PPI, or pixels per inch, essentially how crisp and clear the monitor, the panel, is actually going to appear to your eye. This brings it to about 109 pixels per inch. So 1440p at 27-inch screen size is a great resolution to screen size, and most monitors, especially IPS gaming monitors, will start around $300 and go up to the high $600 range for nicer monitors. However, I would say the majority of nice 1440p 27-inch gaming monitors probably hover in the $400 to $500 price range. This monitor is under $200. Now, granted, this is a VA panel, or vertical alignment panel, not an IPS panel. That is still a lot of resolution and 27-inch screen size for the money. So how is it? Well, let's get into it. First of all, the ports. This has one HDMI 2.0, one HDMI 1.4, a DisplayPort 1.4, and then a 3.5mm audio out. Pretty much all the ports you need, none of the ones that you don't. That's what you are going to get with this monitor, and it delivers. Now, like I said, this is an extremely good price point for a 27-inch 1440p gaming monitor that still has a high refresh rate. So what's the catch? Well, there are two main problems or issues with this panel. Firstly, this has very, very minimal scan lines. Now, this isn't really a big problem and definitely not a deal breaker for me, because it's very not noticeable. Any sort of movement, you'll never see the scan lines. Only on certain colors, when you're really looking closely, will you see scan lines, but it's very, very minimal, but I did want to note that. Now, the other issue is this has ghosting, and this has quite a bit of ghosting, so let's talk about that. There are three response time settings, which are off, normal, and extreme. While extreme has the lowest ghosting out of the three, it causes very severe red and green ghosting, which is where the red and green colors actually separate. And this creates a lot of like weird artifacts on the image. Now, this is extremely annoying and degrades the picture quality more than anything. However, in normal, this is significantly better, and while it is still present, it is only very apparent in some darker scenes. And in normal, while you still do get that red and green separation in ghosting in areas that it will have ghosting, like darker areas of the screen, it doesn't create as much artifacting with that red and green splitting. So normal, it's significantly less annoying, and it degrades the picture quality significantly less. Now again, the ghosting on this panel specifically is significantly better in like brighter areas. That's how ghosting works across the board, but some panels, because of the way that they're tuned and everything else, some panels do kind of normal across the board. This one does significantly worse in darker environments and significantly better in brighter environments. So if I was in a game with this image right here, the ghosting wouldn't be very present at all. But if you're in a darker scene, it would be, if that makes sense. Now, beyond the red and green ghosting, normal ghosting is quite apparent with a lot of smearing, again, especially with the darker backgrounds. Now, while the ghosting is pretty dang bad, the amount of enjoyment I had with this monitor due to the size, decent brightness, and most of all, that 1440p resolution under $200 is the real reason I actually still recommend this monitor. Not to everyone, but to people that want a high refresh rate and resolution to enjoy the gameplay rather than just to hit the fastest times, the most competitive advantage. That's not what this monitor is. But if you want it for the resolution and just the beauty, maybe you play games like Red Dead Redemption, or you play FPS games but are just not super crazy about being ultra competitive, yeah, I still recommend this monitor. So let's get deeper into it. Now, this is 144 Hz natively and has FreeSync Premium. Screen tearing when testing was not noticeable, which is awesome. But let's talk brightness. This is a very common area that budget, like more ultra budget monitors do struggle with. And this is not really an exception here, but it's not terrible. This is 275 nits of brightness, and this is still a good brightness for a dim or darker rooms. This still does give pretty good vibrancy, i.e. the panel doesn't look like crap as far as how pretty it is. Pretty games still look really, really good considering the price point. Don't expect anything amazing here, but I have used, you know, $300-400 monitors that look worse than this in terms of vibrancy and beauty out of the box. So that is actually really good. It's an enjoyable panel to game on and to game in pretty games. Now for HDR, while this does have the option inside of the menu system, which I can actually show you here, if we navigate over to game here and go in there, you can see right there, we have HDR. So if we navigate over to that and then enable that, it's currently on. But if you go into Windows, well, there is no HDR. This is not an HDR compatible monitor, but it still has that in the menu system. That's probably some cost cutting there. Now for colors, this covers 90% of the DCI-P3 color space. If you guys aren't super versed on that, essentially 99 or 100% of the sRGB color space. Out of the box accuracy is pretty much what you would expect. It's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not fantastic. At least the way my monitor came that I bought, it's definitely good enough for most people that just wanna game and enjoy gaming on this. Now, there is also a custom color mode where you can adjust the red, green, and blue, which is great. So if you do have some sort of calibration device, you probably won't due to the price of this, because most calibration tools cost more than this monitor, but it is pretty easy to tune them. Not a ton of adjustability in the menu system, but yeah, still pretty good. Also, this can only output 8 bits of color, but at this price point, it's impressive that it can do 8 bits of color rather than 6 bits, so that is still good. Now, for contrast ratio and backlight bleed. First, let's talk about contrast ratio. This is a VA panel, so you should be getting better contrast, and while it does do better than an IPS panel, this isn't as good as it could be due to the gamma being a little bit off. And due to the lack of gamma controls in the menu system, there is 2 settings, but they don't really do anything. This is something that you would probably, it would be worth going into your OS and tuning the gamma there. So that's definitely an option. Definitely something I would recommend doing if you're gonna be living with this monitor long term. But as far as backlight bleed, surprisingly, my unit, this one had absolutely none, which was very impressive considering the price point and being like a more China style, not name brand monitor. That's pretty good. Now for the menu system and controls, they are pretty bad here. It does have a dedicated power button, which I like, but the control for the menu system takes a long time to learn. They're unintuitive. It's basically just 4 buttons, menu, left and right, and then an enter button. It's really not a good system. You can see I've gotten kind of used to it. You have the controls down here. It's not really great. It's not really intuitive. And then the menu system itself, we can go into here and you can see if we go into something like display, I mean, we have contrast, DCR, and brightness. That's really it. So there's not a ton of controls and adjustments that you can make in the menu system itself. So it's honestly not great overall, but not a deal breaker for a monitor like this in this price point. Now, as for Vesa compatibility, there is a 100mm by 100mm Vesa mount with an asterisk there. Because of the design of the clip-in stand, which this does have a clip-in stand, it makes the Vesa mount actually quite a bit farther away from the actual screws in the back of this monitor. So you will need longer screws to attach that Vesa mount. In most situations, you'll be totally okay. In most like monitor arms and things do include longer screws, but just something to keep in mind. Now, one of the areas that I was actually very impressed with here was stand and build quality. While this does lack any sort of height adjustability or really everything like that, this only really has tilt. It does have a pretty good amount of tilt going down, but just tilt here. What I was impressed with though is that it doesn't really look that generic. And the quality of materials, which I'll turn this around for you, you can see the back of it, it actually looks pretty dang attractive. It does not look like some just generic China monitor. I'm getting kind of like some Samsung Odyssey vibes from this. It looks really nice. The stand is nice, and it's honestly on par with something like GIGABYTE or just behind Dell as far as quality. You can see on the bottom here, that's metal on the bottom of the stand. So this definitely does have a lot of quality materials, and the monitor overall does feel very, very solid. I mean, it's very solid. There's no creaks or anything. This also does have pretty good cable management down here, which you can see. And overall, I'm very happy with like the build quality. Very impressive. Okay, but now the most important section of the video, price and value. Number 1, should you buy this, and what price should you buy it for? Well, this comes in at a crazy base price of $189.99 at the time of filming, which is insane for a 144Hz, 27-inch, 1440p gaming monitor. That's just insane. That being said, I personally bought this one 2 weeks ago or something around that for around $150 on sale. That is crazy that you can get a 1440p 27-inch monitor, gaming monitor, 144 hertz for 150 bucks. That's wild. Now, granted the problems with ghosting, scan lines, and some correction needed for the best experience with gamma and color, this is an amazing value if you want a high refresh rate gaming monitor with a 1440p resolution and a 27-inch screen size. For 190 bucks, I think this is definitely worth it. If you have 100 bucks more, there are definitely better options in that $300 price point. However, that's not what we're comparing it to because this isn't in that price point. So if you are on a very, very tight budget and you want a gaming monitor that's going to be pretty and very enjoyable for the gameplay of a game rather than having the best competitive advantage, and ghosting doesn't bother you too much, actually it shouldn't bother you at all if you're buying this monitor, this is a great monitor and I definitely recommend it. Again, if you want to check it out, there are Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links, but if you are in that $300 price point, I recommend the GIGABYTE M27Q. I think that's the name of it. I'll also link the GIGABYTE below if I got the name wrong, but if you're in that $300 price point, you cannot go wrong with the GIGABYTE. But below that, if ghosting doesn't bother you, this is quite impressive. But yeah, this was Type C Tech Reviews, and I'll see you guys in the next video.